Dumelang Babuhi, my name is Grace Makwaza, and I'm absolutely excited to welcome you to this brand new episode of Leading on Purpose. This is a show where we talk about all things leadership, the sustainable development goals, as well as harnessing your power from within to make sure that you make a positive impact within the society. Today we're doing something a little different. I'm going to be reflecting about some of the lessons that I have acquired since the beginning of the interviews with all of the guests I've been so privileged to speak to. I'm going to be speaking about the 4 pillars of holistic leadership. So first of all, what is holistic leadership? In my own opinion, I think that this is an approach to leadership that is not one-dimensional. It seeks to address problems, but also offer service to people who actually need it, while ensuring that we make sure that the impact that we're trying to make is long-lived. So today I'm going to be discussing some of the lessons and also reflecting about my thoughts on the Sustainable Development Goals. So essentially, the first and most important aspect or pillar of holistic leadership to me is ensuring that you create an avenue of leadership for yourself. For me, I've always thought of leadership as about a position, the president's office, the governor's office itself, or even the mayor's office itself. There were days where I actually aspired to be part of such incredible offices. And while I believe that there's a place for all of these offices that I've mentioned, I think there's an important conversation to be had about people who seek to lead change in gaps which are there within the society. There are places which have been untouched, issues that have not even been addressed in our different societies. And I think that it is extremely important that we have people who seek to make space to lead within these very forgotten areas. There are people who could take up dialogues. There are also people who could actually create projects, social enterprises, ventures, if you will. I think that there's an important place for every single person within the leadership framework. However, I think that looking at leadership from a one-dimensional perspective, about essentially just looking to occupy spaces which are already occupied, is quite redundant, if you ask me. The second aspect about leadership that I think that is very important, that I've actually come to learn since starting these interviews, is the importance of policy education. I've had 2 guests who have honored me with their nuggets about leadership and policy and how these 2 subjects intertwine. I think that our projects open the doors to leadership. However, I think that the policies that are in place keep the structure alive. They ensure that our projects keep the impact that they're trying to make within the society. Policy is not just about the politics of our governments as other people misconceive. I think that policy is about what is it that I can do that can fit in what already exists within the society. So the next aspect about leadership that I think which is crucial to talk about is the importance of service. People think that leadership is about service and they put a full stop to the service that we're talking about. However, I think that service constitutes of sacrifice, it constitutes of perseverance, it equally constitutes of ensuring that you are resilient enough to see what you had conceived to the very end. Service is not just about you as a person who has the vision to take our world forward. I think that service is about ensuring that you put the very people who you're trying to serve at the center of what you're trying to do. So this requires so much humility, because you tend to think that the ideas that you have for people are the very ones that will actually sustain them. But it takes so much humility to realize that you will not be the only mind that is conceiving the ideas that sustain the world that you're trying to change. And finally, I think that the final pillar of leadership is ensuring that we place the beneficiaries of our solutions at the center of the very solution we're trying to put into the world. What do I mean by this? I've often listened to people who have ideas, brilliant ideas about changing the world. The only thing that was missing was the place of the beneficiary in the solution. Are we trying to make change by solely donating to people, or do we want to empower people? I think that empowerment comes when you look at someone's strength and not their weakness, trying to supplement their strength with your resources. That for me is empowerment. So essentially, as a young person who's seeking to make change in the world, my first step, if I put the beneficiary at the center of my solution, would essentially be ensuring that I put people at the very, very pinnacle of what I'm trying to do. What do I mean by this? I ask the people who I'm trying to impact, what do you have? Is it a skill? Is it an underdeveloped idea? What is around you? What can I improve? What role do you have to play in the solution that I have for you? Because all I can provide for you is a resource. I think that some of the most unsustainable projects that I've come to see or even get involved in myself were projects where I thought that I was supposed to come with the mentality of being a hero. And while there's a place for us supplementing people's weaknesses with our strength, empowering people by improving their weak spots rather, I think it's very, very sustainable, and it's actually worth thinking about that we put the beneficiaries of the solutions that we have at the very center of what we're trying to do. So now that I've talked about my 4 pillars of holistic leadership, which I could reiterate, the first one we spoke about was creating avenues of leadership for oneself. The second one was us making sure that leadership is about service and not the office we're trying to occupy. And the third one was about ensuring that we educate ourselves about the policies, because policies create structures under which we function. And then the final one is putting the beneficiary of a solution at the very center of it all. My reflections pertaining the SDGs are quite simple, building on everything that I have spoken about, the very pillars of leadership that I have spoken about. I think that the SDGs are such an incredible framework for us to collaborate in making this world a better place. Because even though a lot of people perceive the SDGs as elitist, I think that it is very, very crucial for us to understand that change starts with something as small as dialogue, something as small as seeking to change the mindsets of people about their role and their place within the society. For me, I've often perceived that the governments are the ones who are supposed to be responsible for driving change. And while that is their role, I have to emphasize that it is their role. As individuals, I think that our place is to supplement their efforts. What do I mean by this? I mean that your ideas as an individual, your human labor, your efforts, even your ability to just advocate for the creation of a policy that could actually improve the quality of life of the people around you. I think that is some of the things that we need to think about doing as a society. As an avid SDG advocate, I often speak about the importance of making sure that we have a longevity mindset when we are thinking about impact through the SDGs. Because some of the impact solutions that I have listened to or interacted with or even been part of myself, I've realized that they're very short term because they seek to meet an immediate need. But while there's an important aspect of us meeting immediate needs, there's also a crucial aspect that we need to think about of building upon what it is that we have already done in societies. Perhaps we should think about leadership not just as a position to occupy or even as projects to be implemented. Perhaps we should think about impact through the SDGs as a collective responsibility. These are some of the lessons that I have come to learn, because all of the guests that I have been privileged to interview have one thing in common. They perceive leadership as an active role that they need to play every single day, whether it is in their own lives, how they live their lives, or just how they treat other people. Leadership does not also mean that the person ceases to be a person. I need to reiterate that institutions are made up of people, and people will always make mistakes. As a young girl, I used to think that leadership was also about people who did not make mistakes at all, and I felt that I did not have a place in aspects like that in leadership roles themselves. However, I have come to learn that as a human being, the most important aspect about me learning for me to learn rather, is for me to acknowledge when I have made a mistake. Especially as a leader, you need to be an accountable leader, understanding that it will take so much humility for you to admit that the solution that I had thought of to maintain this particular aspect within our society is not sustainable enough. Therefore, what is it that I can do better as an individual? You know, I also think that there's a place for sacrifice within leadership. There are things that I will lose as someone who aspires to become a leader one day, but there are also things that I will gain. I will gain a position, and this position is not just about me occupying it for the sake of visibility. The positions are for service. I hope that in every single dialogue that I have had with people, the nugget that you take away is that positions are for service, because people tend to vilify the position without understanding that it is for the service of the human beings that you're trying to serve. So I hope that these episodes have been bringing some sort of light into how you perceive the SDGs, as well as harnessing that power within, you know, because I think that as human beings, we have a sort of power to make this world a better place. There are pessimistic people who believe that there's no way we can mitigate the effects of climate change, it's too late and all of that. However, I'm still a firm believer that with the right people in positions of power, these positions which I have emphasized that they're positions of service, I think we should reframe our mindsets from positions being positions of power. Perhaps we could think about positions as positions of service, because we cannot be in denial that these positions have made a very positive impact within the society. But if we start to perceive them as positions of service, there's a more long-lasting impact that could happen in our world, because now we're thinking about the very people who put us in these positions. Perhaps we could also think about the SDGs as an opportunity for us to improve who we are as human beings. We do the best that we can, not just because we have the resources, I believe. I think that we do the best that we can when we have a role or a purpose to play within the society. So perhaps listening to this episode, you could ask yourself, what is my role? What am I doing to make the world a better place? And by better place, I mean incremental improvements over time. People think that making the world a better place is about coming up with one revolutionary idea that will shock the entire international space. However, I've come to learn that making the world a better place can just start with you being more responsible with how you dispose of your trash at home. Sometimes it can be as simple as you speaking to someone about what can I do to be of service to you today. The world has a lot of atrocities occurring day in and day out. And if we do not start viewing the SDGs as an opportunity for us to improve this world, I think that we're going to be a very sad generation moving forward. I am a proud Gen Zer, and I think that as Gen Zs, the power of information is something that we have at our fingertips. And maybe instead of focusing on information that is destructive, we could think about consuming information that is actually helpful, that actually inspires us to want to become better people. So this brings me on to the conversation about the role of young people in these conversations about the SDGs. It goes without saying that young people have become the voice of this very generation. And if young people become the voice, I think that our role is to be responsible. It's responsibility not just in the sense of what we're doing, but also how we're doing it. Because when you look at the word sustainable itself, it speaks about ensuring that we meet the needs of today without compromising our capacity to meet tomorrow's needs, or not just our own capacity, but the coming generation. It has become very evident to me that we're growing at a very, very fast pace. So if we're irresponsible about the solutions that we're trying to bring into the world just on the premise of making profit, we're not going to make this world a better place. I think that there's a place for legacy as well in our generation as Gen Zers. I'm speaking to Gen Zers, not to exclude other generations, but because I think it's an urgent message for them, because we are the next to carry the baton. And I think it's important for us to educate ourselves, to be responsible about the decisions that we make, and to look at leadership as not just a position, but a position of service, because we are becoming the next leaders. I believe that we can do it as young people. And if we just join hands and take ownership of our ideas and collaborate with people responsibly and instill an urgency, not of saving the world, but of making it a better place, an inhabitable place, a place where you could be proud that you actually left an imprint. And no, this is not a motivational talk that is going to spur you into action. It's just me giving you my nuggets about what I think leadership actually is and what it is not. I've come to learn that leadership is a lifelong journey, and I may be leading my life now, and that may be the only position of service that I have. However, I intend on being an example to other people of how leadership starts, not just how it is occupied, you know? So as a young person, I'm speaking from my heart, and I hope that you receive this with the very intent for which I try to articulate this message. I hope that you try to become the beacon of hope to other people and not take on a pessimistic approach to life. There's an opportunity for improvement. There's an opportunity for dialogue. There's also an opportunity for impact. But all of these three things come when we embrace the very pillars of leadership which I have spoken about, and I will reiterate them. The first one is ensuring that you think about service as the first aspect. You are serving people, you're not serving yourself as a leader. The second one is you putting the beneficiaries of your solution at the very center of what you're trying to do so that they can carry on your impact in their lives. The third one is ensuring that you do not view leadership as just a position that already exists, but you move on to creating avenues of leadership for yourself. And the final and most crucial one, I believe, is educating yourself about policy, because it is these very policies that create structures that keep us in place, that give our world order. We do not move in chaos, we move in order as young people. So let's not think about leadership from the lens of criticizing what is already there, but thinking about our actual role in making sure that the world becomes a better place. These are my reflections on leadership, and I call them my 4 pillars of holistic leadership. I hope that this episode of reflection was quite impactful, and I also hope that you have learned a few things from it. I really wish you all the very best in your leadership journey. Thank you so much for coming on to listen to this episode, and I'll see you on the next one.